When you're starting out with Delta blues, playing single note riffs like this one is a great place to start. Riffs like this are great to learn, but it's easy to get stuck there, and while it's certainly a very bluesy sound, you need to be able to play with a bigger sound to get closer to the heart of Delta blues. That sound comes from a lot of things, but one way that you can get after it is by mixing in a lot of strums. So in this lesson, you're going to learn how to blend strumming into the cry of those single note lines to help you get that raw, in-your-face Delta blues sound. If you're ready, let's dig in. Most of us learn how to strum with a pick, and we're going to take that same idea and adapt it to fingerstyle blues, where your thumb becomes a downstroke and your index finger becomes the upstroke. Let's start with an A7 on the fretboard. Of course, with a pick, we can strum down in direction, and we hit the bass strings first when we do that. And we can contrast that to an upstroke where we're hitting the treble strings first. Right? We still strum the same strings, but there's a slight difference, and that gives us a nice contrast with our strumming, the downstroke and the upstroke. And we can bring that same idea to fingerstyle strumming. We just take the thumb and let it be our new downstroke, and our index finger can brush up through the strings, and that's our upstroke. So we get that contrast of down and up. It's a little darker and brighter when we do this. And notice that when I'm playing fingerstyle, I'm rarely strumming through all of the strings under the chord. I'm really more emphasizing the thumb through the bass strings and the index finger through those treble strings. That would be strings 5, 4, and 3 a little bit with my thumb strum, but then the brush up, the top 3 strings, strings 1, 2, and 3. But simply alternating between downstrokes with the thumb and upstrokes with the index finger doesn't sound terribly bluesy. We need to change things up, and we can do two things to do that. One, we can change up the direction so it's not a strict alternating between down and up. And then two, we can play with the rhythm. Try this out. What we're doing here is changing the direction. Notice I didn't just go back and forth between my downstrokes and upstrokes. We mixed it up in a way that served this rhythm pattern. So what we're doing is going down with the thumb through this A7, up 3 times with the index finger, back for an alternating down and up. And then this time when we go back, the thumb plays the 5th string by itself, the only single note here, and it's the C on the 3rd fret of the 5th string before brushing back up through the top 3 strings. So when we put this together, slowly we get cool. See how strumming creates a bigger sound? This is definitely a skill that you want in your toolkit, and it pairs nicely with a few short and sweet single note licks. Now that we have our strums down, let's bring back those single note riffs. We can take a simple riff, and it makes a great starting point for mixing in some techniques. Let's revisit the one note at a time riff from Tuesday Blues 472 as our starting point. The main hook of this riff is that move up to the C note, 3rd string, 5th fret, with that little blues bend on it, and then resolving down to A on the 3rd string, 2nd fret. So let's keep that intact and use the second half of the measure to introduce some strumming, maybe something like this. We can really mix up the strums, the down strums or the up strums there. What I chose to do at first was just keep it simple and do 3 upstrokes in a row. It's a real classic blues sound that still keeps the heart of this riff the same, but starts to add some of that bigger sound from the strums. Now, as far as the technique goes, we're just combining the two, but that can present a challenge. We're moving in between This smaller movement with your picking hand where we have to be accurate and pick a single string, one single note. Of all the strings, we can't hit anything but this third string with our index finger for those two notes. But then these are maybe a little bit more relaxed when it comes to the technique. We don't have to be super careful. After all, we've got our chord fretted here, so if we strum through the top 2 strings, sounds good. 3 strings, 4 strings, right? We've got some room to, we've got some margin for error right there with our strums that we don't have when we got to pick a single note. So how do we transition between these two techniques, the bigger strum and the smaller, more accurate single note picking? It takes some time, and you should take your time. Slow this down. Don't even think about the actual rhythm at first. Just get the movements down between the bigger strums and plucking a single note, right? You might have to play with your hand position. You might find yourself ending a strum and then hovering directly over the string that you're going to need. Take your time and get that movement right without paying attention to playing a riff perfectly in time. Just get the movement down, add the timing, and add speed later, right? We just want to make sure that we can switch confidently between the bigger movement and the smaller, more accuracy-dependent movement of that single note picking. See how the strums and the single notes work together? Each technique really makes the other one sound better, and this natural back and forth sound helps to create the driving Delta blues style that we're after. Now, let's take this mix of strums and single notes through a full blues progression. I'm going to rearrange the main riff a little bit and put the single note hook at the end. That keeps the strums at the beginning to give us a forward momentum in our group. So we've changed a few things here. We still have our hook where we go up to that C note, give it a little blues bend, and then resolve back to the A, but that happens now at the end of each measure. We set it up with the strums, and I'm also changing to this open A7 here so that I can get my little finger involved in creating some melody lines with the strumming. So this is all upstrokes with the index finger here and just moving down on the first string from the G, 3rd fret, to the 2nd fret, F sharp, and then the open E note. Helps me hold the chord so that we get a really nice sound once we land with that open first string. And then now we switch into that single note part. Second bar, we let it hang. And here, we're just going to use those brush ups to come back up to create just a little bit of tension as we head into the chord change, which is a D7. Now, I like to play my D7 with the thumb hooking over the fretboard and playing the 2nd fret to get a nice low note in the chord, right? So what we can do here is really just strum through 2 measures on D7. As we head back into A7. That D7 is a good place to just lean in and place some chords and really experiment with the strumming that you like. And so is this measure that we're going to, which is over E. This is a great one because we can strum across all 6 strings and maybe even use that little finger to give us a little melody like we were doing over A7. But this is a great one to have some fun, let loose a little bit, because you really can't go wrong as long as you've got a good E chord fretted here. Head back into your D. However stripped down or complicated you want to make this. And then over into A. to wrap us up for the final couple of measures. Here's a complete example that brings everything together at a faster tempo. Premium members, you're going to find the tab for this performance, plus later in the week, a slow walkthrough of this example. Just look for the extended cut for Tuesday Blues 475. Earlier, I mentioned that these strums help create a bigger sound, and they definitely do, but there's something else that helps your acoustic blues breathe. Click right over here to watch this video next, and I'll help you add this key element into your playing. I'll see you there. Until then, practice smart and play on.